Okie dokie, let's start working on some solutions to these challenges. The first one, print the number of books in the database. And again, I don't want us to do the cheaty way, select star from books, and then just look at the bottom where it says 22 rows, which, by the way, your number will likely differ because I inserted some of these null rows deliberately, or partially null rows. So it's okay if you don't see that answer. Whatever answer you see, though, you should see it as a result of running select count star from books. And when we have count star, remember that means count the rows, in this case from the entire table, and we see 22. You may see 18, 17, 19, something like that. Next up, print out how many books were released in each year. So we're going to use count again, but this time we're going to group by the released year. So we'll have a select, and then we want the released year, and then we'll also get the count star from books, but we're going to group by released year. So we'll group them all by released year, however many books are in each group. We count it up, and we'll select that count alongside the year from each group, and we see 2003 had 2 books, 16, 1 book, 2001, 3 books, 2017, 1 book, there we are. That looks good. That's what we're supposed to do, or what I intended for you to do. Next up, print out the total number of books in stock. So we need to not count, but sum together all of the stock quantities. Let me just remember. I came up with some kind of not great names for these columns, in my opinion. Describe books, stock quantity. Yeah, I should have just called it quantity probably, or QTY even. Anyway, I think I wanted to be super clear, but in doing that, I made it hard to remember, or clunky. Anyway, we want to sum that all up. So that's going to be a select sum, but not star. Select sum of stock quantity from books, all rows. And we see we have a total of 2,450. Let's say we just looked at stock quantity on its own. That seems about right. We've got, 30, 40, 100, 150, 100, 100, 170, 100, 95, and then we have 1,000 here. That adds up to be 2,450. Okay. Next up, find the average released year for each author. So let's start by grouping together by each author. So that's going to be select, and then let's just do author F name, author L name from books, but we're going to group by, and we'll do the same thing, author F name and author L name, because I want to make sure we're grouping by both so that Dan Harris and Frida Harris and whatever other data we have where people have the same first name or the same last name, we're at least distinguishing between them. If we had authors with the same first and last name, then we'd be kind of out of luck with this approach. But if we really had to worry about that, we likely would already have some sort of unique identifier baked in, or some way of telling the author names apart. We'd probably just use the ID of each author, but we're not doing that right now. Okay, so this gets me author first name and last name. They're grouped together, but it's not exactly what we want. We need to find the average released year. So I'm going to recall this line, and instead of doing author F name, author L name on their own, I'm also going to do the average released year for all of the books in each one of these groups. And there we are. The average release year for Jhumpa Lahiri is 1999.5. For a lot of the authors who only have 1 book, like Patti Smith, it's just 2010. Although you can see it's been turned into a decimal number. We'll talk more about data types in just a little bit, very soon. And then for somebody like, who has a bunch of them, Neil Gaiman had 3 books, I believe. It's 2006.6667. So that's what I wanted you to do for this challenge, although there are other ways you could have done it. You could have grouped differently, last name first, then first, or last name and then first name. You don't necessarily have to display first name and last name here. You could concat first and last name and then group by that, but that's good enough. Next up, find the full name of the author who wrote the longest book. So this is possibly going to include a subquery. I'll show two solutions. Let's start with the subquery solution. So I want to find the longest book. We can just start with that. Select max pages from books. That's going to give me the number of pages. So we've already seen this before. We happen to know 634 is correct. And then we can take that, and I'll do this over in a file here. We're going to run that as a subquery like this and actually select, what are we trying to find? The title or the full name of the author who wrote the longest book. So we're going to do, let's just start with author F name for first name, author L name for last name, from books, and then we'll say where, and then we want the pages to be equal to this subquery. So this will run first here. It turns into whatever the number is of the highest pages, 643 in our case. And then we run this query. Well, we run it all at once, but then SQL will run this query using 643 there. And we're almost there. It looks like we have two books, though, remember, that have the number of pages. Let me just display the pages here. You won't unless you ran that line with me. I have two books, though, with 634. Okay, that's fine. This answer still is valid because it's finding the book or books that have the most pages. I just have this dumb one that says null for author first name and last name. Don't worry about it if you didn't run that line when I ran it. So we should be seeing Michael Chabon, I don't know, 634. But what I'm supposed to do is actually get the full name as a single value. So instead of first name and then last name, I'll just concat them together. So concat first name and then a space and then last name. We've seen this a bunch of times. And then I'll give it an alias as maybe just author and then pages secondly. Let's select this and run that query again. And we see author, Michael Chabon, pages 634. And that's good enough. That's what we're supposed to do. But there was a second approach, which is we could order by the number of pages. So let's try that. We'll select author F name, author L name, and pages from books. But we're going to order by the number of pages. And I want to go descending from highest to lowest. So we could start with that. And up top, we see Michael Chabon, and then null, 634. And then I can limit that to one result if that's what I want. If I only want the first, even if there's multiple that are tied, I just want the first result. There we are, Michael Chabon. But again, I want the concatenated author name. So author F name, space, author L name. In parens, we can cat that whole thing. We'll call it author. Try that again. And now we see Michael space Chabon, one word, well, not one word, one column, one value we concatenated, and pages 634. Okay? And our final piece is to make this happen, where we have all the books collected by year. We count how many were released in each year. And then we have the average number of pages for each or all of the books in a given year. And I didn't call this out originally when I introduced this, but there's an order here. They are all sorted by the year. And also we have these aliases up top. So let's start by selecting the released year from books. And we'll do a group by released year. I know we want that. And that's not going to get us very far, but that gets us the released years in their own groups, but we're not doing anything with those groups. What I want to do is start by getting the count of the books in each group. And I'll do this on separate lines here, like this. Okay, so released year, and then I want to select the count of the number of rows in each group. And now we see 2 for 2003, 1 for 2016. And then I want to give it an alias to match what I have here. I called it number books, so I'll call it number books. And do it just like that. There we are. Looks good. 2003, we see 2. 2016, we see 1. Let's verify. 2003, we see 2. 2016, we see 1. The order is different, but we'll get there. The next thing we'll select is the average number of pages in each one of those groups. So we'll add a comma, average pages. And remember, this is averaging the pages for each of the groups that have been created based off of the released year. So we can start with that. Run it again. Looking good, but I want to change this name up top to be average pages. So as average pages. And we're almost done. It's looking good, except we're also supposed to call this year instead of released year. So we're also going to alias that as year. And I don't need quotes here because I don't have a space. On this example, I have a space, and it gets unhappy with me because it thinks that this is some sort of command, and then this is referencing the books table maybe. So if I put this there, it realizes, oh, this is just what you're aliasing with as, whereas here, it's just a single word. Anyway, I run that. Almost there. The last thing we have to do is sort all the rows based off of that year. Order by released year. And that should do it. Let's see. From 1945 up to 2017, 1945 up to 2017, I'm ignoring the nulls that I have because you likely don't have those. But if you do, they'll be up top. And that's it. 45, 1, 181. Let's verify. 45, 1, 181. 2017, 1, 367. 2017, 1, 367. That's a terrible way of checking your work, but we're just comparing it to this screenshot. Looks good. That's sort of the culmination of a lot of what we learned in this section. We've got count, we've got average, but we also have group by in there. Plus order by from the previous section. We've got aliases. There's a lot of stuff going on, even though it's not that complex of a query compared to what we'll see soon, especially once we get to joins. It does combine a lot of the elements we've seen in the course so far. All right, this might be a good time to take a break. If you are inclined to take a break, I recommend you do. Because next, we've got a lot of other SQL nitty-gritty stuff to talk about, data types and dates and times, and it just might be a good time to take a break. Okay,